glory, rise and shine. Give God the glory, glory, rise and shine. And give God the glory.
NBNB Reflections. The topic for our consideration is age gap, a barrier to marriage? Age gap, a barrier to marriage? Or should age gap be a barrier to marriage? One of the thorny issues young ladies face in considering a man for marriage is the age difference between herself and a prospective husband. In reality, there are instances where the man proposing marriage is younger than the lady in question or in the same peer group as her. There is another instance where the man proposing marriage to the lady in question is many years older than her. The big question, therefore, is what is the most appropriate age gap that must exist between a lady and her prospective husband? What is the most appropriate age gap that must exist between a lady and her prospective husband? It is common knowledge that in most ethnic groups in Africa, and for that matter Ghana, the expectation is that a man marries a relatively younger lady. It will be observed that in the pre-colonial and colonial era, the age gap was not really an issue. Marriage could be polygamous, and a man could happily marry 2 or more women of varied age groups and generations, so long as the youngest was not a minor per the customary law. The age gap was not an issue worth considering for a woman who was practically held into marriage in the pre-colonial era. Indeed, marriage was strictly an agreement between families, and once a lady's family had agreed for her to marry a man from a particular family or clan, she really had no choice but to oblige. The age gap was not a factor worth considering in marriage because women were practically baby makers. Their children became the workforce on their father's farms or were actively involved in their father's trade. Wives were restricted to domestic sphere and had no business in public domain. Indeed, women had little or no status and identity of their own, and therefore existed in the shadows of their husbands. Marriage was mostly endured, and when they became widows, they go back to their father's villages or their father's village or live with their adult children. Now in the 21st century, the 21st century woman, especially in the age of urbanization, globalization, education, and the equality of opportunities, has nothing in common with the woman of the pre-colonial or colonial era. Formerly, a father finds a husband for her daughter and then informs her daughter to prepare for marriage. But in the 21st century, a lady will find a husband and then inform the father to prepare to present her to her prospective husband in marriage. Women now have total control of the choices they make, including marriage. Regardless of the freedom and independence of a successful and accomplished woman of the 21st century, one of the biggest challenges is conforming to societal expectations. The same society that had no qualms over an older man marrying a younger lady has changed drastically over time. It is now strange, according to society, to see a woman get married to see a young woman get married to an older man. The age gap is considered reasonable when both couples are peers, or if the man is older than the woman between 5 and 10 years. Usually, when the age gap is above 10 years, relatives and friends of the lady tend to question the lady about her choice and at best try to dissuade her from marrying the man. It is becoming abnormal for a young, independent woman to marry a man 10 or more years older than her. Due to changes in society, some career and professional women remain single in their late 30s and early 40s. Their male counterparts, however, or peers, usually find them less attractive, and as such tend to younger ladies who are in their mid-20s, early 20s, and early 30s. Inasmuch as I agree that marriage is a union between two families in Africa, and for that matter, Ghana, marriage fundamentally is between a man and a woman. It is for this reason the Bible acknowledges that a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 to 25. From the foregoing, we can conclude that marriage is fundamentally between an adult man and an adult woman. If two independent adults wish to marry each other regardless of their age gap, should that really be a concern for society? Is it morally wrong for an adult woman to accept a marriage proposal from a man who might be more than 10 years older than her? These are hard questions for society and third parties who are concerned, but not for the old man or the older man and the younger woman who are falling in love with each other. It is in the nature of human beings to have convictions based on their experiences. A young woman might have had a number of failed relationships with her male peers and may finally meet an older man who possesses all the qualities she had ever yearned for, but for the age gap between her and the older man. Should the age gap be the overarching consideration over the qualities of the man in question? Should the age gap influence her decision to overlook the qualities that will make her marriage enjoyable? What is intrinsically wrong with a person's age for which he is found to be unfit to marry a lady who wholeheartedly loves him and has accepted him regardless of the age gap? I conclude by postulating that a lady who finds love, respect, wisdom, and spiritual maturity in an older man, regardless of the age difference, can marry him if only she loves him unconditionally. The caveat, however, is that love does not expire, but age does. Love has no limit, but our physical conditions do have limits. The physical attractions, sex life, and ailments associated with aging are going to be the price a younger woman will pay for deciding to marry an older man. There may come a time when her social life will be curtailed because she has to play the role of a nurse when it becomes impossible for the aged fellow to carry himself. The likelihood of becoming a premature widow is also a reality that must be embraced while she takes the decision to marry an older man. There is nothing in the Bible that makes it immoral or sinful for a young lady to marry a man who is far older than her. Society will always have its perceptions, but the perceptions of society do not always lead to the fulfillment of people's aspirations and satisfactions. Shalom.